Okay. Well, why don't we get started and call this meeting to order of the Polk County Board of Commissioners. Today is Tuesday, November 7th. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, are there any comments or items not on the agenda?
No.
You have 25 minutes. All right, hearing none. Loud to have a motion to approve the minutes of October 24th.
I'll also move.
I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And today we have West Valley Housing Authority interview for a commissioner spot. Paul, please join us.
Oh, there's questions here.
Yeah, there are. There are scripted questions. So if you wouldn't mind saying your first and last name and area of residence for the record, and we'll get started.
Sure. My name is Paul Hamalian. I live at 643 Kearns Drive. If you don't know where that is, it's a brand new street right between Evergreen and Fern on the northeast corner of Dallas. Is that just where I live, or is there more?
That's great.
Okay.
That's perfect. We just have to do that with anybody.
Okay.
For the record.
Okay.
So with any applicant to any of our committees, we have a set of questions. We're just going to go through them. Is there anything you want to say before we get started? Are you good?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. So Lyle, I assume you have the questions with you too?
I do not. I'll just let you go ahead and ask them all. And
Okay.
I'll just save my personal questions for afterwards.
Okay, sounds great. So first question is, Paul, please describe your volunteer involvement and experience and community activities that you have participated in and any leadership roles you have served in those activities.
Sure. So I've recently retired at the end of June after almost 30 years of working with an organization called Habitat for Humanity. I worked with the international or the corporate headquarters of that. So my volunteer experience is, I don't know how you want to describe it. It's kind of a volunteer community organization. But my roles with them took a variety of different positions over the 30 years. I started doing community development in Nicaragua along with my wife. My background before that was actually construction management. So I actually used my construction for the first year. But then I took kind of a series of moves where I worked with the board of Nicaragua doing board formation. And then wife and I, after 3 years, moved to Ecuador, where we started Habitat in Ecuador. I would say the things that are maybe pertinent from that role is I formed the organization, I formed the initial board of directors, but I also worked with the Ecuadorian government to coordinate our programs that we were putting in place with their programs, similar to the things we have here to kind of come down. They don't have vouchers, but they have other programs. So after that, I worked in an administrative role for all of Latin America in finance. I ended up working in finance for probably 10 years at a regional level. And then at a global level, I was over all of Habitat's finances. At that point, we were in about 105 countries. So I have kind of finance in my background. From there, I moved into more kind of executive roles. I became a chief of staff for our international CEO. And that morphed into, so in that role, I worked a lot with our international board of helping set agendas and committee meetings and preparing for the boards. So most of my board experience is from the staff side versus kind of being on the board side. But after about 2 years as chief of staff, I was asked to develop our first kind of global strategic plan. And so I worked in strategy, which then morphed into change management. And the way I would describe that strategy is, I don't know what you know about Habitat, but it's a federation. That means that the over 1,000 local affiliates that you know of, like the Mid-Willamette Valley local affiliate, and each country is a separate legal entity. So whenever you try to do anything within that environment, you're having to engage a lot of stakeholders. So my strategy work was a little bit of the kind of classic strategy, but most of it was actually working with multiple stakeholders to create consensus on what our strategy would be. So I got really good at doing strategy work within kind of multi context. The other thing that might be a little bit pertinent to that is I worked with a number of local boards, mostly country boards, less than the United States. So I've worked with boards more as kind of the overseer to some extent, but coming in as a partner. Our strategy at Habitat was shifting from just doing individual houses, which had been our bread and butter, to taking on advocacy and market development. So kind of really taking on housing as a whole. So I would say in that process, I got to get to know kind of the whole affordable housing sector in a much broader way and where Habitat could lend its voice and advocate. So I retired from that role in June. My wife took a job here, worked with the Grand Ronde tribe. That's what brought me to Dallas. And since June, I've been just looking for other ways to contribute. I would say that I have served on boards. I'm still on the metro area, primarily with the homeless population. I'm still the treasurer of that board. They've asked me to continue virtually, so I continue. So I've been on that board for close to 8 years now, which the constituents of that board are probably a little bit lower than the housing authority. These are people that are coming right off the street, and how do we help them get into housing programs? And I've also been on the board of the churches wherever I've been, and I'm currently on the board of the Salem Alliance Church in Salem. So maybe I'll just pause right there. But you can maybe if you have any questions, I'll answer more. But
That's fantastic. Thank you.
welcome.
We'll just keep going down the questions. If there are any, follow-up questions that Lyle or myself want to ask after one of these, we will do so. But
Sure.
we'll just keep moving. So Paul, what special skills or talents would you say you bring as a new commissioner to the Housing Authority Board?
So you could probably extract a couple of those, but I would say one, I think I have a sense of the role of boards in terms of setting a vision for where you're going. And so I think, I don't know, I've talked with Christian and I've attended at least one meeting. There seems to be a sense of needing a clear vision for the future. So I could potentially contribute to that, or at least ensure that the board is filling its role in setting a strategic vision. The second thing, which I didn't really expound on in my background, is I would say the last 8 to 10 years was really around change and how do you help an organization pivot, and how to go about that in a way that brings people along, those that want to come along. So I would say just kind of how to navigate large change and change leadership is something I might be able to add. And then the third is just general awareness of the housing kind of space, or the affordable housing space. Habitat, I think, largely works with the same target segment that the Housing Authority does. So it's the working poor, it's not the homeless, but it's really kind of the working poor. So I have a general sense of that. I have interacted with some of the players. My interaction, so I'll just give an example. On our international board, we almost always have a former HUD secretary. Now that means I have some relationships. I've worked with them a little bit. Do I know how they work? Do I know how the voucher program works? No, I don't. I'll be honest. I'm not as familiar with those programs, but I have a kind of a larger sense of the strategy of affordable housing.
It's helpful. You sort of answered this next question a bit. What do you see as the role of the Housing Authority Board in relation to the Housing Authority staff and management? You touched on that a bit. And then in relation to Polk County and its Board of Commissioners.
Well, largely I see, as much as I've been able to ascertain from talking to Jessica and Christian, it seems like the board is really kind of the classic board of an ends a vision and then just kind of holding staff accountable to move towards that. And then kind of the role of hiring and firing an executive director. So I just see myself contributing to that role. To be honest with you, it's actually one of the questions I have back to you guys. What are you expecting from the West Valley Housing Authority? As I've talked with Christian and different people, there's been different visions for that entity. You know, get additional assets, do not go and get additional assets. So I'm just kind of curious. I have a little bit of an idea from the path kind of strategic plan. You know, I think it has a role in affordable housing and to some extent even in the prevention. What are your hopes or expectations? I guess I'm commissioner, so that's you, Jeremy, or Lyle is on the phone.
Yeah, I suppose I could start there. So obviously the housing authority is a separate entity, and our role as commissioners is to appoint folks like you to the board to do exactly as you say, develop strategic plans and visions, and to enable and hold staff accountable towards those visions. Obviously we're in a very difficult housing environment right now. So I think it's got a lot of focus around the state, this issue. And paths obviously in our homelessness prevention strategic plan address that as one of the 3 goals. We're not an entity that can do much other than convene folks. So there are several players doing this work in our communities. We have the housing authority, of course. They're not doing a lot of development, asset development. Polk Community Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit doing most of the development in Polk County. And then of course the private sector, and then other partner housing authorities. And certainly my hope is that we can look at this issue really objectively and say, hey, where are our opportunities and where are our opportunities to collaborate? Because I think there's a bit of nonprofits and entities tend to silo a bit, as you're aware, not out of anything negative. It's just, you know, they're dealing with what's in front of them and what they need to do, but how can we sort of plan together strategically and take advantage of each other's assets and just to better serve the public. So
be a team player in the space.
Right. And the housing authority is going through some changes too. They're going through market conversion. So there's some public housing assets. Of course, HUD has dramatically underfunded the maintenance and you know long-term viability of those projects. So they're looking to convert to market-based so they can actually fund you know upkeep and renovations, which would put you know some more pressure on the voucher system, which is already under quite a bit of pressure. So it's definitely something that I'm interested in because I hear from constituents all the time about housing difficulties. So I'm looking for somebody to be part of that process.
Team player and yes.
Yeah. And then I'll turn it over to Lyle. If he has anything to add there.
Jeremy, you covered it. The biggest thing, Paul, is just finding people that can collaborate and work with others. Joining all of our resources together to be as effective as we can, cost effective and the best outcome with what limited funds we have. So it sounds like it's right down your alley from what you've already shared with us. So I'm good. Jeremy, great job covering it.
Great.
Thank you.
And Greg's been here since the beginning about the housing authority and the development side but if there's anything you want to add, Greg.
No, I mean, your question is on point and good. If you ask all 3 commissioners, you get a different answer.
Okay.
I mean, that's just how county works and the board works. They all have differing opinions on what direction things go. I mean, it's not rare, but on this tough subject, I can't imagine everyone having the same opinion. It's a difficult subject to address in that. But I think there are ways the housing authority can make improvements, working together with others, maybe looking at regionalizing, if that makes sense, maybe having a better connection with partners. Right now, the housing authority is working with the county to help with finding resources and all those things. So, you know, if you can be part of that, if you have ideas, you've seen a lot more than we have in this area. I think you'd be a valuable asset to them, at least with your knowledge and that.
Thank you. I mean, what I clearly hear is a sense of collaboration. I mean, it's just one player amongst many. I mean, the fundamental problem, as best I've told from just walking around in some of our conversations, is supply. So whatever can be done to increase supply, and maybe the second one, which I picked up a little bit, is the housing authority is the provider of voucher programs, so they have to be great at that process and take advantage of all of those funds. For the people of Polk County who need it. So it seems like there's a little bit of opportunity to collaborate, figure out how you contribute, but then just being really good at executing the programs that you do have.
Yeah.
Does that sound about right? Okay. Go ahead.
Yes. So since the Housing Authority has a public mission, you will be expected to represent the citizens of your community in the policy decisions that you participate in making. Are you willing to expand your personal perspective to include those of the greater community as best you can? And how would you make sure that you represent that greater community interest in the decisions that you would make?
So it's probably one of the more challenging things as a new resident of Dallas. I don't have the natural relationships through other things. There's a couple things that come to my mind as I think about that. One would be I have joined Rotary here, which has given me an opportunity to kind of rub shoulders and get to know different people in the community. The second thing, I would probably just continue to do what I've done in the last 3 or 4 months, which is I've been just having coffee with people. I've gotten to know Brent and several of the staff members in that team. And that's led me to a little bit of the a micro shelter issue and understanding that issue on both sides and looking at Facebook. And so I guess what I would say is what I've demonstrated in the last couple of months is just going around having conversations with people and asking kind of questions and being curious. And obviously the people I just listed are on kind of one side of that issue. I need to find places to listen to the other side of that issue and understand kind of where they're at. Maybe the other thing that's a little bit informal is I've just kind of walked the street in my own neighborhood. Whenever I've seen somebody and I'm driving in, I got something I got to do, but I'll stop and just have a conversation. So I know that doesn't bring in broad sense of the community, but I think what the behavior I've demonstrated so far is just being curious and engaging people and asking questions.
As you know, as you mentioned, the Housing Authority provides housing for workforce housing, middle housing for some people, between 50 and 80% AMI, but also the public housing really serves vulnerable folks,
Right.
people with disabilities or other
Right.
issues that might not otherwise be competitive in the market for housing.
Right.
So I think that is a primary focus of target project. I apologize for that. I wasn't asking you.
You found housing.
Oh, you figured it out. Super. Well, thank you for that. We'll keep moving. So Paul, a primary tenet of our agency's mission is to provide safe, decent, and affordable housing opportunities for community citizens with special needs, like I mentioned, such as low-income families and elderly or disabled individuals. How best do you envision the Housing Authority using its assets, both capital and personnel, to provide increased housing opportunities for citizens of this community? And what do you see as other unmet housing needs of the community that the Housing Authority should consider as a priority for its resources?
I would say I'm still something of a novice of really understanding the issues enough. I guess what I see, I kind of go back to what we've talked about already, is the Housing Authority has a mandate to execute those programs well. And so I think doing that well and doing it in collaboration with the other county services, so there's wraparounds, because housing is just usually one thing that's really a challenge for those people. It is healthcare and mental health and other things. So I would say it's executing its mandate well, and then collaborating with all those other services. One of the things, to be honest with you, I've been most impressed in is these, I don't know exactly how they title them, but once a month, the community and family outreach team brings in all the players together.
Service integration.
Service integration, that's what it is. I think the West Valley Housing Authority should be at the table for those. So you're aware of all those things that are going on, and you're filling the gap where it's within your mandate, and then you're collaborating with the people who are in related functions. So I guess I would say it's being a team member among that whole ecosystem. I mean, I do think the open question is how much development should they take on? I mean, they do have, it is a space that they can continue to increase supply, so increase those assets. And as I look around at, you know, a little bit I've seen in other housing authorities, they have developed other means of providing housing, which become other revenue streams, which then kind of build on the capacity to do more creative things. What those are, I can't say other than, you know, an open mind to kind of explore those things.
Great. All right, we have one more question. Will you be willing to read agendas, Paul? You've developed agendas for boards. And prior to each meeting and attend meetings once a month. So they meet once a month. It's a Wednesday at noon. Third Wednesday at noon. Is that?
I would say yes, although after the one packet, I'd like to consolidate the packets. They list like almost every transaction in the financial report. Maybe that's what needs to happen on that board, but it just seems a little, yes. Thank you.
You have some opinions on the packet.
That's okay.
Well, those are the last of the formal questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't discussed?
I mean, I think what you see is my life has been around service. And so, even as I've been the last 3 or 4 months, I was just looking for a place of where I can contribute. And I've had multiple different opportunities come up. But I feel like housing is kind of where my calling is, my skill set. So I come to this role really was a posture of it's an opportunity to serve the community that I'm in for the time that I'm here. I don't have plans to leave, but it seems like a place that I can contribute with the skills I have. So I really just saying I come with a posture of service and opportunity to serve those in need of decent shelter. And that's what's been my life kind of purpose for the last 30 years. This seems like an opportunity to continue that.
I appreciate you being here, putting your name forward and attending some of the housing authority meeting and a path meeting and service integration meetings. Those are really some great pathways to get an idea of what the community is looking to accomplish together. Yeah. So really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Next steps we'll discuss as a board and then let you know.
Okay.
About the appointment.
I look forward to that.
Lyle, have any questions?
Oh, Lyle, do you have any questions? I'm sorry.
I guess I got more of just a comment. So, Paul, I just want to comment. Your introduction is probably one of the best I've ever heard. You are so obviously a very good communicator. Everything, you were very thorough, very informative. I just want to tell you that was an excellent job.
Thank you.
So you answered almost every question I had written down in your introduction. So, and like I said, we will be getting back to you. So appreciate you very much for coming in and willing to get involved.
Okay. Thank you. I look forward to working with you.
Kind of lucky you happen to land in Dallas in Polk County.
Of all places.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Any non-listed items we need to accomplish before close out?
Nope. No, sir.
Okay. Did you have anything you wanted to address to the board, sir? Okay. Mr. Ainsworth? All right. All right. And we'll adjourn. It is